This is fifth in our Indic Way series. So we started with the Indic Way, and we did a series called the Indic Gym. The third was the Indic Enterprise, using principles but using it for running our businesses. The previous series we finished was the Indic Way Power series, to address the different powers that we have within ourselves and how to bring them for our own performance. And this, what we call becoming a superior person, is the fifth in the series, and we finished the first session last month, which was more an introduction to the concept behind and how we were taking forward different aspects. So I will just very briefly summarize for those of you who might have missed the previous session, to say that when we say superior, we're not referring to superior compared to anybody else. It's not superior compared to Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, many other people for whom we have great respect. It's superior compared to ourselves. And therefore, in this series, we very consciously said that we can get inspired by just ordinary people around us who have displayed some superior aspect, which left a mark, which made an impression. And therefore, the modules in every session have three aspects, which is the power of ordinariness, and from the power of ordinariness, certain aspects that we can learn. The second we call learning from the Lilliputians, people whom we just won't recognize, but yet very valuable learnings by looking at what or how these people did something. And the third aspect is towards becoming superior, aspects which we have certainly covered in many of our earlier series, but it's still of value for us to move towards becoming a superior person. And it is in this session that we're going to really deep dive, so that we all get an understanding of what is it that we mean when we say superior.
Thanks, JK. Thanks, Saurav. So again, welcome. I wanted to just draw your attention, like we do at every session. And as JK said, this is about towards success and joy, happiness. Our own improvement, self-improvement is really what we are focusing on. So when we come to self-improvement, many of us, read books, listen to people, and do many things in our journey of self-improvement. In these series, we just want to say that there are people around us who may not be, as JK said, as inspirational or as standing out like Mahatma Gandhi or any one of those great people, but ordinary people who, if we observe and learn, can be truly as inspirational. As one of our teachers told us, it is easy to be inspired when you watch the Niagara Falls, but you could be equally impressed and learn from or be inspired by just watching the peeling of a banana. It is the same fantastic architecture, the same fantastic coming together of nature to produce a wondrous Niagara Falls or a tasty banana. So where do we continuously learn in our mission of becoming better every day? And here we are drawing our attention to the fact that there are people around us from whom we can watch, learn, and make it part of our own lives. So that's really what we are trying to do here. And at each session, we'll try and take up some aspect of it so that we can learn step by step. JK, back to you.
Thanks, Ram. So in this session, you will find from the title, we have deliberately, therefore, drawn attention to the standard ways in which we look at aspects when we say superior. Strike it off. The earlier session, if you all remember, was superior via greatness. Greatness struck off and ordinariness written on top of it. So it was superior, not via greatness, but via ordinariness. Similarly, superior not via qualifications, but via competencies. And that gives us the ability to bring back the focus to say, hey, all this is available and we are seeing it day to day around us. So it's only for us to observe, imbibe, and make it part of ourselves in how we proceed. So we did session 1, we are now in session 2. We will progress towards all these sessions, which I don't want to now list out. But in each one, you will find that there is certainly an aspect which we all maybe think is the way, and we have deliberately taken the very opposite concept and say that it is from that we can move towards becoming superior.
No, JK.
So we left last session where we did present some examples from people whom we would have met in our ordinary lives. We did share some examples of Lilliputians and what these Lilliputians did and what we can learn from such approaches, attitudes, or actions. And we said, therefore, towards becoming superior, we first need to understand, hey, what is it? Who is this superior person? What are his or her manner of engaging with life? And we shared some parts of what Confucius had said, more to set the scene for us to do deep dive. And in this session, we first want to take the module about the superior person, but we have a greater understanding of what is it that we are moving towards. And then we'll take the other 2 modules of the power of ordinariness and learning from the Lilliputians. So towards becoming superior, again want to refresh all those people who might have logged in first time, and even for the others, why is it we are representing the superior person by this oyster and pearl? It is something we should keep in our minds, and it's an aspect to say that the oyster, when an impurity enters the oyster, in order to fight that impurity, it starts to secrete some liquids which gather around that impurity, and it keeps doing it till the pearl is formed. So the pearl is formed from within. The pearl is formed by first understanding and becoming aware that there is an impurity. And therefore, to combat that impurity, and not only to get rid of that impurity, but to improve and say, hey, that impurity, and from working on it, I can get a pearl which is so beautiful. And the same thing is available in each one of us, and that's why we are representing the oyster and the pearl as our imagery towards becoming a superior person. Any thoughts here?
Nothing. Not now.
So we first want to do a deep dive into who is a superior person. And to become superior, it's like anything else. I mean, Ram and I have in the earlier series always referred to our physical body and drawn a parallel from our physical body because it's much easier for us to understand our physical body than it is to understand our mind and the processes that the mind goes through. So if we say we want to become fit, healthy, you need to let go something, you need to build something. You may need to let go fat and you may need to build muscle. So anything would have both these aspects. And therefore, to become superior, we're going to look at, hey, what is it that we need to let go? And what is it that we need to acquire and build? Huh? I think. So let's first.
No, go ahead.
So let's take the first part. Who is a superior person? So we want to now present aspects which are, when I say manifestation, this is what we observe in those people. This is the way in which they engage. They engage with events and situations. They engage with the relationships around them. This is how they engage with the world. And the superior person, no pettiness, no comparisons, no jealousy, envy, happy for others. Okay, my neighbor bought a new car, my relative's daughter is first in class, my child is nowhere close to becoming top of the class. None of those matters to these people. There's no pettiness, no comparison, no jealousy, envy. They are happy for others. It's an aspect that we all will know. So which is why we keep on saying, hey, there are people around us who show these things. There are people around us who are like this. And that's what we should look at. We don't need to look at some, sadhus and sannyasis and philosophers, and it's here. And therefore, it is from that we get inspired, saying, hey, if that person can be like that, why can't I? So, no pettiness, no comparisons, happy for others. No judgments. When I say no judgments, I will add this thing or minimal. Okay. And therefore, fulfilling relationships, they have the ability to just accept people as they are. And people as they are, pluses, minuses, no criticism, no judgment. Very happy moving to fulfilling relationships. No expectations or minimal, and therefore, nothing surprises, nothing angers. So they're able to just take it in the stride, some ups, some downs. We have done this in our last session in the earlier series, which we called Riding the Roller Coaster. But the superior person, nothing surprises, nothing angers. And beyond me. So welfare and happiness of others, very important to them. And therefore, he or she is not the center of the universe. Very action-oriented. We have shared this with you in all our earlier series. None of this, even though we say it's indic and concepts like that, is for some retirement and sannyas and renunciation and going away to the forest. It's for active engagement in life, for performance, for absolutely reaching our potential. And therefore, the superior person, effort and action, takes responsibility for his or her life and continuous effort and action to make things happen. And minimal disturbances, very low. We have covered this, but we'll cover it again and again in terms of the low frequency, intensity, or duration of any disturbance, and therefore equanimous and happy. And this is the superior person, and we see many around us. And like we shared in the earlier session, these people may present this superior aspect, maybe not all the time, but even if it is sometime, even if it is on one occasion, the superior aspect that we should enjoy, observe, imbibe, and start to make it part of ourselves.
When we talk about happiness for others, it's usually, quite tough. And for me, I learned this when I used to work in Johnson & Johnson. We had a branch manager. I used to be the local sales manager. And those days from Bombay, messages would come by telex. I don't know, most of you would not have heard of a telex, But telex was a message like a fax would come into his office. So he would be the first to know. So one day, I saw everybody gathering. There were some sweets being got. Generally, people were brought together. And then he called me out to share the fact that I have now been promoted and moving to Bombay. But when that message came, he got together everything, including some sweet, etc., and created such a joyous way of sharing that news. Uh, it was truly touching. He could have just sent it through the Pune to my office, or he could have done it in this manner, which is that superior person with that quality. It is not necessary that everybody will have every one of these qualities. If they do, fantastic. So from each person, we can pick up. We've been talking about relationships as one of the key things that we deal with every day. And most relationships become tough because of expectations, uh, wrong expectations. Why can't she behave the way I would like her to, and not the way she is or he is? And just that is enough to spoil the relationship. And all the time looking at why not this and why not that, instead of looking at the beauty of what is. And that is really what we are saying, that as we look for each of these different examples, that will resonate, and we can identify people who have these qualities and we can learn from them. Back to you, JK.
So we start to get an understanding of the superior person or a superior aspect, even if, like we said, displayed only once at some time, but it is a superior aspect. So let's get some additional wisdom. Last time we had some inputs which we took from Confucius. Cicero, just look at this. I mean, this is all about 2000 years ago, somebody. And to me, I'm going to list out what Cicero has said. What is amazing is that what was valid 2000 years ago is valid today, and it is the same. I mean, I list out, I'm sure it will bring a smile to each one of your faces as you identify with each one of those sentences. So he said 6 common mistakes of people. The illusion that personal gain is made up of crushing others. The tendency to worry about things that cannot be changed or corrected. Insisting that a thing is impossible because we cannot accomplish it. Refusing to set aside trivial preferences. That is that pettiness which we were referring to as far as the superior person is concerned. Refusing to set aside trivial preferences. Neglecting development and refinement of the mind and not acquiring the habit of reading and study. And attempting to compel others to believe and live as we do. I'm sure each one of us, since we are not able to actually interact like it would be if it is a classroom-oriented interaction, I'm sure each one of you, as you reflect on these lines, you will be amazed that what was valid and true 2000 years ago is valid now. So we, as people, we haven't changed. People, we are the same.
Each one of these, I think, is powerful. But I just wanted to touch upon the fourth one, refusing to set aside trivial preferences. We talk about this now as a sense of proportion. We normally lose a sense of proportion. Does this really matter in the overall scheme of things? and unnecessarily blow it up into a huge thing. So every time we say take stock and make sure that we have the right sense of proportion, that trivial things don't take precedence in our lives, and we have that right sense of proportion. I am just amazed. I think truths last over centuries. So I think that's why it is still valid, every single word here. So back to you, JK.
Yeah. So therefore, we have an understanding of who is a superior person or how they manifest, interact, engage with the world. So towards becoming superior, our second aspect was therefore what to let go and what to acquire and build. So we want to refer to what we need to let go as the orders of the mind. I will present it in the next slide, what it is we mean by saying the orders of the mind. And what we need to acquire are the indic muscles. Many of these we have referred to in our earlier series, but we wish to summarize and bring to focus certain important aspects that we need to acquire and build. So if we move towards the orders of the mind, like I was mentioning to you about the physical aspects and the physical body that we understand, I first want to draw the parallel to say, since we understand the body better, let us first look at the orders of the body. We will look at the orders of the body and we will draw the parallels to the orders of the mind. So if you look at the orders of the body, say bad breath and body odor. Okay. Now everybody's got. So it doesn't matter whether you belong to religion A, religion B, country A, country B, person of these qualifications, person of anything, rich, poor, none of that. As a human being, you are blessed with bad breath and body odor. So we have bad breath and body odor. Now, it impacts and offends others. Like a friend of mine used to say, hey, you can be very comfortable with your own bad breath, which is true. You may be very comfortable with your own bad breath, but it is people around you who really get affected. But therefore, all of us have bad breath and body odor. It impacts and offends others around us. Impacts us if left unattended. Both of those. I mean, I remember all of us would have known that in early days, whether it was Europeans, others, etc., many of them didn't believe in brushing their teeth or washing themselves, regularly, and that it came later. But it affects the body. I mean, even now. Therefore, if left unattended, it causes its own germs and harms and stuff like that. So everybody's got bad breath and body odor. Impacts and offends others around us. Impacts us too if left unattended. So are we conscious of them? And do we wish to do something? So if we wish to do something, because we are conscious that we have these odors, and we are conscious that it affects others, we are conscious that if left unattended, it can harm us, and therefore we wish to do something, we wash, bathe, brush, clean. Maybe use mouth freshener, gum, deodorant. Avoid garlic, onion, dirt and dust. So because we are conscious and we wish to do something, we do practice a combination of these on a regular basis. So in effect, what is it? Our approach is to say, we will clean to remove, perfume to mask, avoid to minimize at source. To summarize, we all have bad breath, body odor. We are conscious that it impacts and affects others and it could impact us too. We wish to do something and we do this at 3 levels. We can clean, we can mask, and we can avoid to minimize at source.
JK, next.
So this is our approach to get rid of, to let go the odors of the body. And all of us practice this very religiously. This is hygiene for us. In a manner that we have the odors of the body, I want people to either raise their hands or to list out, what do you think are the odors of the mind? Saurav, you could unmute anybody who wishes to have it or have input for us. Yeah. Others may use the chat to add to.
Meera says anger, judging
Right.
others, ego. Pragyan says ego.
So Ram, you could summarize. I'm not watching the chat people, so
Yeah. Selfishness. Whatever Cicero said, let go. Vasanas, negative thoughts. Greed. Okay.
all right. Certainly, I think whatever you all identified, whether therefore anger, ego,
Greed,
greed,
ego.
self-centered, and whatever Cicero said, plus many of these, certainly. No, I think that what each one of us should draw is somebody needs to mute, I think. Oh. So what we need to first accept is that we have orders of the mind. Doesn't matter whether we list out everything or we list out a few. That as much as there are orders of the body, we have orders of the mind. And therefore, as much as the odors of the body, we clean, we mask, and we avoid it, we need to become conscious and aware of the odors of the mind and come up with, Ram keeps saying shampoo for the insides of the head, but the equivalent of that for looking at the odors of the mind. And the odors of the mind, some affect performance, some affect relationships, some affect both. So let us only draw the parallel. I'm again saying this so that it becomes important to us that the orders of the mind, if left unattended, will affect our own performance, it will affect relationships. And therefore, we must become aware of the orders of the mind. We must decide that we wish to do something about it. And then we must practice to make sure that that's what. Ram?
So I think the key here is awareness. Moment, all the things that were listed here as it applies to each one of us. First is, I know we are very good at identifying it at the others, but it is difficult to identify it for ourselves. And as soon as we start identifying what we need to let go for improving our own performance, improving our own relationships, then first is that awareness. And moment we are aware, then I'm sure we can think of how to minimize, how to get rid. The 3 steps that JK said about remove, mask, and avoid. So, but starting point is awareness, which is, as Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. When we stand in front of the mirror, let us be true to ourselves when we analyze. What is it that we may want to let go? What we may want to improve? JK.
So we wish to just present some of the orders of the mind. We will be covering all this from the next session onwards in more detail, but it would sort of summarize. Many of you have rightly pointed out. So negative emotions, definitely. And now most frequently what any one of us go through. Anger, and anger I want to say is in all variants. Anger can be at the lowest, it could be a disappointment, irritation, anger, rage. It only varies in scale. So in some way, anger, anxiety and fear, these are common, which all of us go through at different event situations and relationships. So the negative emotions certainly are an order of the mind. Expectation, wants and needs, and we will cover this a little deeper in subsequent sessions, but these cause their own manner in which the mind gets agitated. Likes and dislikes certainly are a source to produce the orders of the mind. Judgmental nature, I think we've covered this in many earlier sessions, but this is the one predominant one, especially in relationships based on biases, prejudices, and the judgmental nature, big order of the mind. And self-centeredness, and therefore me, center of the universe, and that causes certainly order which impacts the manner in which we relate, engage differently.
No, JK. Move on.
So, understanding of the orders of the mind. So now let's look at indic muscles to acquire. Therefore, our approach towards becoming a superior person is a combination. What is it we need to let go? Therefore, become aware that we need to let go. Become aware that if we need to do something about it, we need to do it similar to our body in terms of those 3 levels at which we need to do something. Our second aspect is what are the muscles to acquire and build towards becoming a superior person. And we have covered this, but we are going to deep dive into this in subsequent sessions. Acceptance is a very powerful muscle which reduces disturbance. Action orientation as what next? This is the situation. This has happened. Okay, what do I do? And move towards that powerful muscle. Building positive emotions. We had a session which we called Who Wants the Remote? And so holding our own remote and understanding that reduces the negative emotions and judgment. Intellect as another powerful muscle that we need to build, which addresses many aspects in terms of what we need to do towards both equanimity, happiness, joy, performance. So indic muscles to acquire and build, we have just summarized. We will get into details of this in subsequent sessions. Ram?
So we have covered this in the past, but the key here is it is easy to say all this. Like, today we are in lockdown, an acceptance, starting point. And then how do I manage is what next. The number of people who need counseling and help because of lack of acceptance of what it is today itself shows how disturbed their minds are. I'm not saying right or wrong, it's just a fact. And therefore, for us to be able to perform and be happy, the starting point in any situation is just the acceptance of that reality. And then moment you do that, there is clarity on what next. Till we accept, there is confusion. And that is why we'll go into each of this as we get to those sessions. But that's really the positive side, how to build strength. So, yeah, JK, back to you.
So if you look at orders and muscles, letting go orders and acquiring and building muscles move us towards becoming a superior person, therefore towards success and joy. Our, like we said, one order and a muscle as we progress towards each of our sessions. We have 8 more sessions in this particular series, and we will deep dive so that we only take the important ones and look at, hey, how can we do it? We're not just going to say it's an important thing, but it's about how. That it's only our own practice to make sure we make it part of ourselves. And we have said this in a earlier session, but I want to bring focus to this in every session. Whenever we are saying superior person, we are saying moving from a perfumed personality to a fragrant personality. We wish to become a fragrant personality. And that is why we look at both these and we deep dive further into that session. Ram?
So what is the understanding when we say perfumed and fragrant? And that, I think, is the key. Even at work, the difference between somebody working with initiative versus incentive. How can we have transformation from within and not just outside? So the whole focus is that transformation from within, starting with an awareness, and then how do we move? The change is within us. That is fragrance. Everything else is a facade that can get blown away with the first shock. So that is really the thinking. How to become better and better internally so that we can be successful and happy consistently. JK.
You all may wonder why we have shown, of course, letting go, palms open, like you let go of a bird to fly away, and palms together, representing what we need to acquire and build, because we do receive. We do receive so much of input from various people, and we receive starting from, therefore, creating the awareness, starting from then, hey, what can we do about it? And therefore, we receive, we accept with grace, and then we start to invite practice. So that's why we've represented in these two forms. So now let's move to our second module in every session. So this module, we now have a greater understanding of who is a superior person. And towards becoming superior, there are 4 aspects that we need to let go and aspects that we need to acquire. Let's move to the second module, which is the power of ordinariness. And from the power of ordinariness, we get inspired. And it is from the power of ordinariness that we know, hey, that these superior aspects are there in so many people around us. So why shouldn't we invite, make it part of ourselves? So superior among the ordinary, I first invite Professor Jayashree Suresh. She's been a regular participant in all our Indic series, and she's always had very valuable inputs and observations. And so, Jayashree, I request you to share with us an anecdote. So, Saurav, if you could unmute. Jayashree here?
Yes, I saw her earlier. Yes.
Now, you are able to hear me?
Yeah.
Clearly.
Okay. Good evening to all of you. I would like to share some of the things that I'll just give a little context to that. We are 9 of us, ladies, or we were girls and now becoming women and ladies, or whatever you call it. And we were close knit, in the sense neighborhood friends. Right from the childhood, we have grown together. One of the earliest at the age of 19 was to get married was Smita. As soon as she completed 12th, they got her married into a family which is army family, in the sense he was a squadron leader, and so she got married and she went first one to leave the group. And she, after sometimes when she came back to Hyderabad, we were having chat and she said, Jayashree, nobody can believe in your circle that I am just a 12th pass. She had just completed 12th and she said, that means the way she carried herself, the way she was keeping the abreast of what was happening, she was able to, get along with everybody, relationships, everything. And that then, how did she do that? So she kept on reading, listening, watching. This is the way that she acquired everything, whatever she could manage with the conversations and everything. So she went to different places, Adhampur, Bareilly and all, and then she came back to Hyderabad. At that time she had 2 children and she was at the age of 45. So I was telling her that, Smita, why don't you think about start working in a school or something, do something about it. You have been, now that children are grown up, they are married and all. So she said, Jayashree, I don't think so. I would like to go out and work. So we had a dialogue and conversation and all. So I asked her why. She said, look, with my qualification, I can get a job at that time, 1992 or something, maybe 3,000 rupees. Today, he said, I am worth about 8,000 rupees at that time. Because I iron clothes, I stitch my own clothes for everybody in the house. I do cleaning, I do everything, cooking, everything. If I go out to work, I will have to employ somebody for whom I have to pay more than what I'm earning. So if I'm earning 3,000, I'll have to pay, at least 7,000, 8,000. And I'm very happy with what I'm doing. So I do not want to go out and work. I am happily doing my knitting and whatever I want to do, cooking and be happy with the family, serving the family. And this was what, I was feeling that she had her own pride. And she said, then when I was asking her, how about doing higher studies? To that also, she said, no, I don't think so. I'm happy with what I am. And as long as I don't have any problems or issues, let me continue like that. So this is the conversation that I wanted to, and coming from we were all coming from a middle class family, and they had a shop and 2 brothers and only sister. And so her parents were a bit strict. They did not allow her to go, but my parents were a little liberal. So I used to go more to her house rather than she. So this is what the incident that I would like to share. That here is a person who said is so proud of what she was doing and pride in whatever she's doing to this day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jayashree. So I would now invite any of the participants. What is it that you feel is something we can take from what Jayashree has described about Sita, this person? If anybody, what aspect with which you feel, hey, this is something wonderful? Anybody like to share? Or if anybody raises their hands, please unmute.
Sure, sir. We're getting some questions, answers in the chat box.
Chat. Most of them, JK, are putting it out in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Happy for everyone.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 or 2 of you, if you like, you could just unmute and talk.
Yeah.
Anybody? How come people are becoming shy and writing and not speaking? Happy with what she was, satisfied with others was foremost, finding happiness within. Finding happiness within. Happy with what she was.
Great, I'll set it off. Ram, then you may wish to add to that.
Somebody's on.
So, yeah, somebody's wanting to.
No.
So when Jayashree shared this with me, two aspects struck me. Number one, she had no comparisons with anybody. Jayashree said there were 8 or 9 classmates very close to one another. Each of them have moved on. Many of them very highly qualified, working for large companies, great roles, big positions. She had no comparison, and it didn't bother her that her classmates were much better off in education or doing aspects and roles which are completely different from what she does. First. Second, like many of you pointed out, very happy being who she is. No disturbance in her mind saying, hey, I am only a housewife. No way feeling in any way inferior in all her army level interactions, other couples and families and friends and other circles holding her own. And like Jayashree said, pride in herself as an individual. Both those are superior aspects in a person, and both those make sure she has no disturbance and she is very happy and doing great stuff in whatever she's doing. That's what struck me. Ram, you had some thoughts.
So, I was reminded of the head of GE India, a guy called Scott Bayman, I think, many years ago. At that time, at the beginning of the IT industry growth in India, GE was maybe the largest recruiter and kind of pathbreaker. So when Scott was at his peak here, somebody interviewed him and asked him, how do you think of people in India, etc.? And he said, yeah, as good as anybody else in the world. He said, is there any difference that you see in India compared to anywhere else in the world? And he said, yes, I'm very confused about one word, and that is batch. He says, it doesn't matter if somebody is promoted, as long as that person is not from my batch, then I have to compare. So this batch thing, comparison amongst our peers, is something that is quite unique about us, it looks like. Maybe from childhood, our marks are compared with our neighbors' children, etc. So this is something unique, that our frustration is usually because somebody from our batch is doing better, and our happiness is because somebody from our batch is doing worse. So that, I thought, was something this lady has accepted so well, that she is really happy, as most of you have pointed out. It's just happiness from within. It's just fantastic. JK, back to you.
Great. We have an anecdote from Meera. Meera, if you could share.
Yeah, hi. This is a person, her name is Vairamani. I met her about 2 years
Meera,
ago.
can your video come on?
Okay. Yeah, can you see me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is a person I met 2 years ago. Her name is Vairamani. She's around 40 years old. At least she was 40 when I met her. I met her at an awards function of Times of India. They were having what they call the Heroes of Coimbatore awards. They were distributing. I went there representing somebody else. And they just said 4 lines about each woman. And this woman was also introduced. I was quite keen to understand why she was doing what she was doing. So I met her afterwards. I just met her for about not even 5 minutes. So whatever I have of her story, I can share. But I was very impressed with the way she did her job. Her father was an undertaker at a crematorium, a burial ground. It was not a very formal place. It was a large place. And she said he was just there. He just happened to start doing it. I think then everybody accepted him as the undertaker, and they were living in a small little hut or small little place in the burial ground itself at the end, at some one corner. So while she was, I think at least some 8 years or 9 years, she said she joined her father and she was there with him. So she took part in whatever her father did. So, I mean, I think she just got used to it and she was just there as part of her job. And she did it with so much of earnest. She helped her father, whatever he did, she tried to follow. After some time, she got married, but she still wanted to continue doing this. She thought it was something very, very important. She thought it was an important role. It's something that helps people, pass over, if you like, to the next life. So she kept thinking it was an important job and she wanted to do it. And after her father passed away, her mother and she tried to continue doing it. Before that, she was already married and she was continuing with her father. Then father passed away, mother and she did it. And then everybody noticed sort of the earnestness with which she did her job. So the prayers she said and the way she said her prayers, people usually, the undertakers just do their jobs. So whether it was digging, she helped her mother dig. Well, if it was burial, she helped her mother dig. Her mother couldn't do much physically, so she did that. And if it was cremation, she arranged everything and, she did whatever she had to do. And she would say prayers, which normally these people wouldn't get involved in. She was doing that earnestly. One day she got a phone call from somebody who said, somebody gave me your number, told Vairamani, and said, somebody gave me your number. Can you help me? A person I know, one boy I know who lives nearby, is an orphan. He's passed away. I don't know what to do. I don't have money also to help, but somebody told me that Vairamani would help. So I'm coming to you. Can you help me? So she said, okay, just bring the body over. I will help. You don't need to pay me a single rupee. So she did that. She did that well. She did whatever she had to do. She collected the wood. She did everything at her expense. She didn't charge anything at all. And she did it. So this she got the reputation for also taking care of people who really couldn't afford to pay things like this. So anybody, anytime felt, there was a person, or even in an old age home, or somebody was, they didn't know what to do with him, no family to claim the body. So they would bring here and she would do it for free. And her mother passed away later and then she just kept continuing. So irrespective of the religious background, she said, Chelavanga Christiana irpanga, Muslim irpanga, Hindu irpanga, enna irnalum adukku etha mari na panniduven, she said. So I'm sorry, translate for those who don't know Tamil. So irrespective of the religion, whatever rituals were required, she would do it. So, and then she kept saying, I asked her, why did you do it? Wasn't it taboo at that time? Because I know that in our families, it was unthinkable for a woman to go to the, nowadays it's a little different with the electric crematorium, but earlier, no women wouldn't go to the burial or cremation ground or whatever. So I asked her, wasn't it taboo? She said, yeah, I know people didn't like what I was doing. I know they weren't appreciative of it, but then I did it. Enga pasanga valandappo also, like she felt that she would take them there. She would take them with her. So everything was done as part of a family. She took great pride in her job. And that is what she wanted to do. And this fact that, why did you do them free? You could have asked for some money or you could have asked for sponsors. She said, I'm getting enough money. Their income was, every family would give some money, right? For somebody who does it. So she would get 3,000 per cremation or burial or whatever. That she had enough, according to her, she had enough income. And that was enough for her to do something for free because she could, after all, just do it and not claim anything. So she felt very happy with what she was doing. She was so content with the job. She said, because I was doing all of these and I was allowing them, giving them an easy passage to the, the life after, I feel all of these spirits are helping me. So see how content I am. See how well my children are doing, how everything is so happy. I'm so happy. Children are happy. And now I even have 1 or 2 grandchildren who are also with me. I look after them when my children need to go out, but I look after them, but they're really with me in the crematorium and or the burial ground. So she just felt the whole family was together. They were all so happy. Everything is only because the spirits were looking after her. That was her overall attitude. So I don't know. What I felt was taking on something that's as taboo as doing an undertaker job, doing something as physical as, digging up a grave. She only couldn't handle children being buried or cremated. She said, only that I wouldn't do. I'd prepare everything, keep it ready. But when the actual closure happened, I would move away and my daughter would do that. She said that I couldn't take it at all. But everything else, she took it with a lot of equanimity and didn't worry about it, and brought up her children so well that they didn't think very lowly of her. They also thought she was doing something very good, very great. They had a lot of respect for her and all of that. So I thought that was something that I thought a very ordinary person. In fact, when she came to get the award, she was like all, closed. She couldn't look up and talk and do all of that. It was only on a one-to-one that, one could communicate with her. That's my ordinary person doing extraordinary things.
Amazing one, yeah, Meera. Ram, you have some comments?
No, I think, to find this superior person in and around us itself is just fantastic. One of the challenges most of us have is pride in what we do. It is not what we do that matters, but how we do it, the attitude behind it, that really matters, that makes the difference, the motivation behind it. We could always be looking for something around the corner, something better to do. But the fact of accepting and enjoying and being happy with what you do and having that pride in what you do is just an amazing quality that all of us should learn from. Today, most of us don't have pride in what we do and don't take the happiness. It's a task, it's a job, it's not a vocation. And I think this is a great lesson. Over to you, JK.
Anybody else here who has some thoughts or inputs about this particular anecdote? Thank you so much, Meera. I think, other aspects which stood out when she shared this with me. How can you even say that this person is an ordinary person? I think it's amazing.
That's what most people have said, that only. Amazing.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah.
Most people have written amazing.
Okay. No, look at that. And look at her attitude. I'm willing to help people who are less fortunate, doing it with pride, doing it so that they get peace and they get that comfort when a loved one has passed on. We know the anxiety, the trouble, and the sorrow that surrounds it as far as the family is concerned. And here's a person who, in her own way, adds comfort, makes sure that it's being done and done well, done with all the solemnity, as well as whatever comfort that needs. Well, I think it's an amazing thing, and it only reinforces our own approach to say there is so much that we can get inspired from the ordinary. Thank you so much, Meera. So we have already done this, learnings from the above anecdotes. We have already done this. I want to say it's all this superior not based on qualifications, based on competencies, which are skills and attitudes for life. And that's what we saw, what Jayashree shared and what Meera has shared. And I would again urge that any of you, if you have something you wish to share, please do reach out to Ram or myself, send us an email, telephone. Saurav had asked that we should circulate our email and telephone to all our participants. If you put it out in the chat window right now, for those who haven't taken it last time, they could still do that. Please do share. And many would have seen something, and it is so important that we share and we celebrate the superior aspects among the ordinary. Now let's move to our third module, and we'll spend a few minutes there before we wrap up. We left off last time. We said, hey, please do attempt to do something ordinary. we started to say, hey, in those days, I mean, pre-COVID, we would have said, take a bus ride early in the morning, do something which you haven't done. Or we said, we call somebody now whom you haven't spoken to, or a less fortunate member of your family or friends. Anybody here who tried something ordinary in the last 1 month, and would you like to share anything, please? Okay, if no one, I would urge that during the next 4 weeks before our next session, please do try something which we said is ordinary. We listed out last time, but it could be as simple as making a call and talking to somebody whom you haven't spoken to, who's less fortunate, either from your old neighborhood, amongst your relatives, something. Just do that and share your experience. We think it's I will later share an aspect in one of the other next few sessions on an experience that I had visiting less fortunate member of our family with whom we are all lost connections. It is children of cousin. But I'll share that with you at another time. But I would urge some of you to try this and then share with us the next session. Any thoughts here?
No, JK.
So let's move to this. Somebody was saying something, Saurabh?
Jawahar had a question.
No, sir. I think I pressed it by mistake.
Okay.
Sir.
Right, Jawahar.
Learning from the Lilliputians. I will share this aspect, and then Ram, I think you said you had one, and then we could continue from this. This was many years ago, mid-80s. Ram and I, we were part of a company called Computer Point, chain of retail stores, which we had started at that time when PCs had started coming into India. So I was the branch manager of the Madras branch, and we had a lovely showroom, GN Chetty Road, opposite Vani Mahal. Brand new showroom, and so anybody who passed that site who couldn't help but notice Computer Point and this fancy showroom with one great neon sign up in the front. So it was not only attracting potential customers, but it attracted all the political parties. So every political party, and at that time 3 prominent, the DMK, the ADMK and Congress, their functionaries always will have some celebration or other in the Talaivarukku edho pannano, avangalukku edho pannano, katchikku edho pannano. They always have party functions all the time. So one of these from the local party functionaries in their white dhoti, white shirt, but whatever party colors which they have, they will come into the showroom, and even if I refuse to meet them, they'll sit there until I meet them. They won't go away. And anyway, you all know they can be quite a pain if they are not attended to. So I ended up meeting different party functionaries once in 6 months, somebody or other, and contribute something. It could be a bag of rice, something, some few 100 rupees, whatever. I used to do this for the first couple of years. The third year, when one of those guys came again saying, hey, Talaivarukku or Kondatam, we have to do something and all that. I said, look, I have been supporting and doing something whenever you come. I have a certain problem and I think you can help. He said, solunga sir, na panni thara enna problem, whatever I. He said, look, there is this one dealer of ours who regularly takes computer consumables from us. He hasn't paid us for the last 6 months. And whenever we try and ask him, he ducks it, he is not available, whatever. So would you be able to, sort of very politely send one message or send somebody and say that he must pay. He said, no problem, sir. Adina sir, நம்ம ஒரு ஆள் அனுப்பிச்சு ஒருத்தரோ ஒரு அப்படின்னாக்கா ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்கா பயந்து வந்து பணம் கொடுத்துருவான் சார். No problem, I can make for all this happens. So I told him that, look, yaar, he has to pay us around 20,000 rupees. And our margin on this entire transaction was 10%. So 2,000 rupees is our margin. I'm happy to share 50% of that with you. So 1,000 rupees I'll give you if you can ensure that this amount is collected. And I thought I was one smart guy, smart guy with all my education and qualifications and corporate experience, having presented this and said, therefore, I'm happy to share 50% of the margin. He told me in Tamil, I will say it in Tamil and then translate for those who may not understand Tamil. He said, sir, நீங்க இந்த மார்ஜின் ஏஜ்லாம் சொல்றீங்க அதெல்லாம் எனக்கு எதுவுமே புரியல. என்ன பொறுத்தவரையிலும் உங்களுக்கு முதலுக்கே மோசம். ஸோ நான் 20,000 ரூபாய் கலெக்ட் பண்ணா 10,000 ரூபாய் கொடுத்துருவேன். அதுதான் நியாயம். So what he said in Tamil is that your capital is at risk. It is not the margin. I don't understand anything of what you said as margin. If you don't get 20,000 rupees, it is 20,000 rupees Govinda for you. So if I collect 20,000, give me 10,000. I was amazed that this guy didn't get overawed by this great showroom. This brilliant fellow giving all this yarn. And this, I would say, competency made sure that he completely moved the discussion to a level where it was 50% of 20,000, not 50% of 2,000. Ram?
Yeah.
Anybody who has some comment on this particular thing? And then Ram, I think you had. So it is continuously we learn from Lilliputians. And I want to define this Lilliputian for those who missed it out last time. Lilliputians are guys whom we don't know. Even if I share his name, you won't recognize him. They are not the Premjis and the Ambanis and the Tatas and the Birlas and the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs. These are absolutely unknown guys. These are anonymous authors. Great wisdom and learning for us from how they operate in any situation or in a specific particular situation.
Yeah.
Huh?
Sure. So we had an office boy called Mani who was missing for a couple of days in the office. And then when he came back, he came to see us and walked into the room, very disturbed. And he said, I've been missing 2 days because my young daughter ran away and got married. And we've been trying to figure out what to do these last 2 days. And he said, my family, neighbors, everybody says, go there, go with, a truckload of people, movie style, go there, bash up everybody and bring the girl home. And he said, I am thinking differently. And I wanted to just check with you guys before I acted. This is full of emotion. He's got a whole lot of people putting enormous pressure on him to do something now. It's his daughter in whom he had great pride. He had thought of getting her married in great style. And she's gone, ran away. So he said, I found out that family has taken her in. They are treating her well from what I know. And I don't want to get carried away by all this movie business. I am thinking that we will go and help conduct a proper wedding and reception and accept her and them as sambandhis and do it that way. Everybody is telling me different. This is what I am thinking. What do you think? Is this what I'm doing right? what do you all think? What would you say?
Yes, sir, this is Jawahar. So I would definitely tell him to, go and bless the marriage and solemnize the marriage, because I have done it several times, and I would certainly advocate, because after 18, it is a prerogative of that individual to choose their life partner, and even a dad or a mom has no right to say, whom they should marry, and it's the birthright to decide whom one should marry. That's my ideology, and I strongly believe in that, and I support this cause.
One of the things, Jawahar, that I have learned is, and you're right, you're absolutely right in what you said.
Yeah.
We give good advice when it happens to other people.
Yeah.
When it happens to us, we need to see.
Sir, even if it happens to my daughter or a
No,
son.
I'm just joking, Jawahar. I know you, so I'm just joking.
Strongly advocate this, sir.
It is like what happens when the coconut falls on the neighbor's car. If it fell on my car, what would I do? It's the same thing. But I agree with you. Anybody else? And I'm just looking at this guy. He's not that educated. He went to school, no doubt. But look at the thinking, high emotion, and still having that equanimity. His intellect was available. He was thinking of his daughter. He was thinking of her happiness and how to make sure that things got settled in a way that she will have two families and not be cut off from her old family. And that thought and that thinking from somebody like that was a fantastic lesson to maintain a sense of balance and proportion. And later on, he came many years later to share photographs of grandchildren and all of that. And great joy and happiness came out of that decision. So amazing thinking and quality to learn from.
Sir, I just want to add one thing, sir.
Sure.
Is that, whenever these things happened, in my friend's family or in my relatives' family, the one thing that I think is they have not seen the other side of the world. I have been in the US for 15 years, and then I came back to India and start my own business. So, there are a lot of bad things in the US culture, but, there are very good things that we can learn from US culture as well. And this is one thing where US American parents let their children decide their own life partners. They don't actually interfere, and, they don't care about the status or their religion or a caste. Nothing comes into play. As long as the girl likes the boy and the boy likes the girl, that's all it needs. And then though no financial transaction is involved, the boy and girl actually earn, and then they themselves arrange the marriage, and then they just invite the parents for the wedding. And the whole system looked so great to me. And because a lot of Indian marriages happen even without asking the girl or boy whether they like that their partner. And it just goes by caste, religion, financial status, and so many horoscope, and so many all the other things come into play. But the girl doesn't like the boy and the boy doesn't like the girl. And to me that looks like ridiculous in Indian system. So just a thought I wanted to share.
Sure.
Sure,
There is,
sure, Jawahar. So Ram, what stood out for me in this particular anecdote? And this is what I wanted to share with all of you. Jawahar, your inputs are very valuable in terms of societies and cultures where marriages or the way boys and girls celebrate for themselves happens, and it's part of their culture. But let's look at that in Mani's culture. Not only in Mani's culture, it is so with most of us in the way we are here. First, my daughter cannot get married without my permission. And what is this?
Ego. It's ego, according to me.
No, absolutely. No, Jayashree, that is right. Not only that is our culture.
Yeah.
I am the father. I am her guardian. I have provided for her entire life. How can she do this? Second, what will my friends and neighbors and my other family members think of me? That I'm a useless guy, don't even know how to bring up my daughter. Look at what I need to face from my own family, my brothers, my others, and enough people around me. Plus, caste and subcaste and all those are all part of it. It is ingrained. It is so important to us. All those being what it is, that money was still able to move above that petty thinking. The way he has been brought up, the way the entire family experience, the way he has seen things happen in the movies, still one step above and to look at it and then say, நடந்தது நடந்து போச்சு. நடந்தது நடந்து போச்சு. குழந்தை சந்தோஷமா இருந்தா நம்ம என்ன பண்ணலாம்னு பாருங்க. ஆமா இவங்க எல்லாம் தான் சொல்லுவாங்க, எங்க ஃபேமிலி சொல்லுவாங்க, சுத்தி சொல்லுவாங்க. That's what he came and approached Ram and then discussed to say, is that the right thing for me to do? I think that was an amazing aspect to being in the midst of all that, and that is how it is to still be different. That is the superior aspect that I saw in what Ram shared.
In fact, currently I am facing a situation where the girl wants to marry a person, but the father is saying no because of the rivalries which was there 3 generations before. 3 generations before, these two families had the rivalry. So that rivalry, keeping in mind that rivalry, father is objecting and girl is saying, I will not marry to other person. If at all I want to get married, I will get married to this. Now father is telling, ma'am, why don't you convince her? She is not at all. She said, otherwise I don't want marriage. It's okay, I will just live my life without marriage. But he is not willing to forget those rivalry that is happened 3 generations or 2 generations. So that ego, I feel that is what is
Yeah, big challenge most of us have is letting go of the past.
yes, past. This is exactly what she
Yeah,
and he is supposed to be, leader of their community there, and so he feels that my daughter doing that day with the rival, what will I exactly what we have discussed, the situation.
yeah. This brings me back to my favorite phrase, sense of proportion.
Yeah.
What daughter's happiness or some prehistoric rivalry? So yeah.
It's exactly like what we see in movies,
I know. That's what
Exactly.
Murli has written here, saying this is a common movie story.
I saw that too.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Jayashree.
Thank
So
you.
learnings from the above anecdotes we have already discussed. So again, wish to remind all of you here, please do share your own anecdotes of learning from a Lilliputian. Please again, reach out to Ram or myself and we would love to gather these both 2 aspects, power of ordinariness. Second, in learning from the Lilliputian, there's a lesson which is of great value for all of us. That's it. With this, we come to the end and we are open to any questions that any one of you may have with respect to this session. Thank you.
JK, you can stop screen sharing and then we can see in case there are questions. Anybody? Less interactions. No.
Sir, maybe since you have some time, just a thought is we talked about not comparing with others, right? But usually I try not to compare myself with others, but when I go for a school meeting group where I have friends, some 50 or 60 friends, we all meet, right? That's the time, even though I don't want to compare myself, I'm inclined automatically that thought process comes into my mind. Have I not achieved, what some of my friends have achieved in their lives, right? So when the thought automatically comes into my mind, I don't know how to put it off, and it takes some time to actually come to terms with those. So if you can give me some tips, like how to get over that, it'll be very helpful, sir.
Yeah, just to add, maybe to rephrase in a particular way. So there is, when you feel that somebody has achieved or somebody has done more than what you have done, that also gives you and motivation to work even harder. So there is a very thin line where being content with yourself but pushing yourself by looking at other examples. So how do you draw the line, which over a period of time it becomes very challenging? So if you can throw some light. So for example, if I have meet 10 friends and say 3-4 of them have done more than what I have achieved, one, I need to be content, but at the same time I need to push myself a little higher, right? Because learning goes on and on and on. You can't be content on that front. So maybe your views on that. Yeah.
So Ram, I have one little story here. Ashok, I know you raise your hand, but I'll just take two minutes to respond to both Deepak and Jawahar, because I think there are some related aspects. So Jawahar, I think Ram shared with you this batch concept and what really happens when we all get together as classmates and compare with one another, etc. Deepak, a question of yours in terms of that. This was, I was part of the IPL in the first 2-3 years, and I had an opportunity to interact with some of our leading players. And one of them from South Africa, he shared with me that he had an opportunity to either become a great athlete or a cricket player. That was Herschel Gibbs, many of you might have seen. So I believe his coach told him once, he chose cricket, but he was a very good athlete during his school days, very good at the sprint. So he had to participate in an intercollegiate state level athletics championship. His coach asked him, Herschel, who do you think you need to beat? And so he said, I answered saying, hey, it is John in that school. He's quite nippy. And then Peter in that school, equally fast. And I think I need to watch out for them and the other guys to beat. So then he shared with me, hey, my coach told me something, JK, which always has stood in my mind. So he said, Herschel, please understand, you are now running 100 meters in 10.9 seconds. You need to run it in 10.8. You need to run it then in 10.7. Then you need to run it in 10.6 and 10.5. As you beat yourself, you will beat the others. I think that's the only answer. Only as you beat yourself, you will beat the others. So everything that we believe in and everything that we really talked about is anything for us to achieve. Make ourselves more competent and capable. Doesn't matter if somebody else has already achieved something, somebody else has got something else. Great, we are happy for them, we wish them well. But if we wish to achieve, it's always about what is it that we need to do. Continuously beat ourselves so that we can beat the others. But beating the others is not our objective at all. It is this continuously becoming superior by ourselves to reach our potential is what our learning is. So I would say, Deepak, it's an approach which all our thing is about what we can do and what we can do best and bring out the best in ourselves.
And Deepak, if it is by comparing you get motivated, that may be one way. But normally what is recommended is to have a purpose that is satisfying to you. If you have a purpose and you know that's the right purpose, you will know it whether you feel like getting out of bed Monday morning or not. Then you have the right purpose that motivates you to get out of bed and get to doing what you want to do. So that's the test. What drives you? It's the purpose for which you're doing what you do. And that clarity, as you work on it, and you will know how you jump out of bed on Monday or not. So, Ashok, you had something.
Ashok, you had.
Yeah.
Ashok, you're on mute or something?
No, you're not on mute, but we can't hear you. No.
Try readjusting your earphones or something.
Maybe your earphones are not connected properly, maybe.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hello?
yes, yeah.
You can? Yeah, lose contact.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just share a dilemma. That's all. I'm certainly not disagreeing with anything that you have said. But, when we talk about many of the things that you've said, I see them falling into two broad categories. One where it impacts only you, and one where it impacts people around you as well. And to me, a lot of what you say is relatively simpler to implement when it impacts only you. Don't get angry, don't benchmark, don't feel, yes, it's relatively simple. It's not easy, but it's relatively simple. The challenge is, what would you do when you need to do it on behalf of somebody else? And actually, Deepak asked a question. This question was pretty related to what I was going to say. That yes, I don't want to benchmark anybody. I can drive myself. I can be contented with what I have. But how do I take that same approach on behalf of a child or a sibling to whom I have an obligation? And where I believe, rightly or wrongly, that unless I do something more proactive, that person will suffer. And am I then imposing my way of life upon somebody else's way of life? It's easy for me to say, I'll be content with what I have. What right do I have to say that somebody else should also be content with what they've got and should not aspire to something more? And if that person can be benefited by something that I do by way of being contrarian to what you have said, how do I refrain from doing it? How do I stand away and say, it doesn't matter, be happy with what you have got?
So let me clarify one part while JK may try and answer other. Nowhere in philosophy, the ancient philosophy, does it say that you cannot aspire for more. So they give you absurd examples to drive home the point that possession, having lots, King Janaka, one of the greatest kings, all that kind of stuff to show nothing wrong in aspiring for more. What they caution you about, and which we are all trying to practice, that your happiness should not be dependent on a future acquisition. Nothing stops you from acquiring something else. But your today's happiness should not be dependent on a future acquisition which you're not certain about. So that is the distinction between what you were saying and what may be misunderstood by many as you can have and don't need to aspire. I think part of what Deepak said was, I need to motivate myself. I need to drive myself to greater success, reach my potential. Nobody stops. What motivates you? The question is, today's happiness should not be impacted by some future acquisition. That is the definition of contentment and happiness today. So, JK?
I think it's a very valid question which you raised, Ashok, and I would go back to one of Cicero's lines, which I really contribute to. And what is valid for me need not be valid for others. So even if I have a certain way in which I'm doing, like you said, if somebody close to me, somebody whose happiness I wish for, wishes to do it in some form, I would very happily support if I can support. I would certainly say what is valid for me need not be enforced upon what is valid for people. Okay, I think we are coming to the end. If anybody has anything or
Yeah, all I'm saying is should not be a misunderstanding that we want everybody to be the same.
Yeah.
That is not the intention. Everybody to meet their individual potential. Raman had something to say.
Yeah,
and then
Raman
we'll
has
close.
some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see one example of in reunions. You see, as a batch, we pass out, go on to various careers and jobs, and after 25 years, we have a reunion of old classmates. In that reunion, obviously no two persons will be equal. Somebody would have achieved extraordinary things, somebody not so. But still, the person who hasn't achieved is actually proud of a colleague's achievement rather than having a feeling of jealousy or a comparative achievement. So I think that the similar attitude can be developed not just for the silver unions, but in general.
You're right. Tough, but that is development. Yes. Tough, but yeah, development. Yeah. Okay. I think we've run out of time. JK.
all right.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.